One of them had to die for the other one to survive. That's what they would write in their diaries. This is a story about June and Jennifer Gibbons, the silent twins. Checking for focus, checking for focus, checking for focus, focus. Focus, you see me. Brightness is next level. The brightness is on very next level. Yeah, this is where I wanted, but then it's going to be bright at all. At all? You're going to be bright at all. Load. Shut this somewhere as well. Hi, hello and welcome. What did you decide to call it? You look lost, but I think we just found you. I think this is your kind of content. I am still prepping this background because I'm recording at the beginning of October and gonna release it during the Halloween week. It's one of the spook videos. The week still doesn't have a title, but it will. It's gonna be 5 videos of 5 things that will creep the shit out of you. Cool? Cool. The lesser known fact about me is that I'm super creeped out by twins. Just in general. I don't quite get the connection. I'm a Scorpio. I'm super like independent, you get me? Like my birthday's on the 29th. You get me. I'm of an opinion that every person should have their own character and personality, so I don't get why you want to share somebody else's. But that's obviously not the story of June and Jennifer Gibbons, the silent twins. We're going to Wales today. And this is one of those story of twins that will creep the shit out of you. It's literally if like 1950s had memes, that would be today's video. Cool? Let's begin. June and Jennifer were born in 1963 and their family was originally from Barbados. So their dad moved like in a search for a better life. He moved in as he got a job as a technician for Royal Air Force, so he moved the family to Wales. Now because this is the 60s and because they moved to rural Wales as well, the family stood out because it was a black family in a prevalently white city, which obviously will be prevalent for the upbringing of the kids. So June and Jennifer were born. June was born first, about like 10 minutes before Jennifer. However, Jennifer was always the dominant one. It was really obvious from the very early age that both girls had some speech problem. They just wouldn't talk. They would kind of like mumble. They invented their own language between each other, but at a dinner table, let's say you're having dinner with your parents, they just wouldn't talk. Okay, now sideline, we have this joke back home, like my family is partially between Serbia and Montenegro, which used to be one country. Montenegrins have a joke because they are considered, the stereotype is that they are super lazy. So every time I would mumble, which is a lot of time, my dad would tell me this joke at the dinner table. Why are you telling this? Don't know. Which is about this kid at a dinner table that he didn't speak until he was like 8, and then he just sat at the dinner table, passed me the salt, and they were like, what? Since when do you speak? Like, what is happening? June and Jennifer never heard about that joke. They just never had reproaches about anything. And because this parenting allowed for that, because the society allowed for that, because they were obviously bullied at school, they kind of just withdrawn and connected to one another. To the point that they started doing everything in sync. I'm talking everything. From talking, it would literally be like one would signal to the other and they would talk in sync, move in sync, do things in sync. They wouldn't go anywhere without one another. They would even eat in sync, so as one is taking the bite, the other one is, which obviously doesn't do well in school. There was actually occasion from their childhood in school when they were to be vaccinated, right? So they managed to go into like one of those PE halls or like an empty classroom and everybody's to vaccinate them, and this doctor was that creeped out by the two of them because they couldn't stand separation even when they were getting vaccinated. They just gave him that dead stare. So he even went to the house and was like asking the parents, what the hell? First of all, why are they not talking? Why are they giving them this stare? Like, they need some therapy. And not just that this wasn't like helicopter parenting. These parents were, I mean, truly I could call this neglect, I would say, because they just let these kids do whatever they want. They did bring them to the doctor one time, however, the doctor said they're gonna grow out of it, and the parents just accepted that. Just to make it clear, I'm in no way, shape or form dismissing both racism and bullying as the causes for them to even more withdraw into themselves. Like, teachers would let them out earlier than other students exactly because like other students would bully them on their way home. that would just cause them to even further withdraw and just be with one another. Obviously, doctors would see them further in life and they would just define them as mystical. They were just like, there's something mystical about them. Since when is mystical a GP diagnosis? Also, it was also said that maybe they were prevalently racist because the family was from Barbados, so it might be like, ooh, voodoo magic, we don't want to mess with them, there must be something mystical because they're still not talking. So, as they're not talking, by the age of 14, somebody finally decides like, hey, let's get you to see a therapist. And this is where the creepiest things come to play. The therapist soon realized there's nothing mystical about these girls. One of them is controlling the other. She left the tape recorder in the room where she left them alone, because they wouldn't talk when the therapist was in the room. It would just be like eye contact and like one would look at the other and go, don't talk. So she went out to the room and left the tape recorder on, and she realized nothing mystical. Jennifer is the one controlling June, and it would heavily depend on Jennifer what June was to even say or reveal. Because this therapy isn't making any progress, because again, even when she leaves, they're not talking about anything in particular. This therapist just breaks it out to them during one of those therapy sessions that they're gonna have to assign a teacher each, and it's like, sorry, we're gonna have to separate you, and just be like, cool, you're going with that teacher, you're going to a separate class. Of course, they lost it. They were giving these teachers nightmares, they were legit nightmares. And even from across the playground, even from across the canteen, they would look at each other to do in sync, like different things. PE, in sync, they move in sync. Eating, one bite, she's looking like, is she gonna make the bite? And that's how they would eat. The creepiest things. So these teachers are like, sorry, I can't do this. These two are a freaking living nightmare. So they go back to this therapist, and the therapist just, talks to the parents, pulls them in for another meeting. She's like, sorry, we're gonna have to send you to separate schools. That's the only solution. Of course, Jennifer and June did not take this lightly, to the point that they clenched their fists. You know how, like, that meme? I'm imagining that meme of just like clenched fists, and then they started attacking each other. I'm talking full-on physical attacks. They were digging nails into each other's skin, they were scalping like their hair, taking their hair off. It was proper physical fights. They were like, okay, yeah, this doesn't seem like it's gonna work either, does it? After this session with the therapist, obviously they went home and the parents were like, sorry, well, they keep advising us that this is the only solution, so let's just try it out for a couple of months. And they sent them to separate schools. Now, of course, they didn't do this willingly, because June and Jennifer had this thing that repeated itself through, again, a couple of times, and that is that they would act as dead weight. So you know how like hard it is when somebody's just like stiffening their whole body and tells them to move? So they had to physically like remove them off the beds to even bring them to their feet to go to these separate schools. Of course, this only lasts for a couple of months because they were just living nightmare to these schools when they were separated. And when they would actually come back from the schools again, they would withdraw from each other, try to make up for the lost time. This is when they started writing. And they realized like they are really good at this. So between each other they would speak, but again, everybody who heard it from these school teachers, from the therapist, said that it sounded like their own invented slang, like something between English and then Barbados slang. So it kind of sounded like they invented their own language. So they do two things. One of them creepier than the other. Both of them super creepy. Because now they're 14, 15 and they are not expressing themselves sexually, let's say. So they're just spending all of the time with one another. So what they're doing is they're playing with dolls. Dolls, yeah. And they're inventing these whole plays, radio shows with these dolls. And by that, I mean their imagination was quite morbid and they were inventing causes of death for all of these dolls. So let me just tell you a couple. June Gibbons, age 9, died of leg injury. George Gibbons, aged 4, died of asthma. Blue Gibbons, aged 2.5, died of appendix. Not appendicitis, appendix. Peter Gibbons, aged 5, adopted, presumed dead. Julie Gibbons, aged 2.5, died of a stamped stomach. Polly Morgan Gibbons, aged 4, died of a slit face. And Susie Pope Gibbons died at the same time of a cracked skull. Because they were spending all the time with one another and because of this repressed sexuality, they didn't understand, and nobody spoke to them about hormones, about anything. I don't know what their parents were doing, but they started taping their chest with like a tape so that their breasts don't grow, because they didn't understand that this should even happen. It was just wrong to them. And this is when another creative outlet offered itself again, because they were all the time in their room. So they actually wrote books, and one of them was published. So June wrote Pepsi Cola Addict, which was about this guy who was sent to a reform school after having an affair with their teacher. Look at that cover, look at the cover. And Jennifer wrote Discomania, which was about violent teenagers that were just driven mad by disco music. Healthy interests. So now they're 16, and they left school without any prospects. Like, they weren't really looking for jobs, which meant now they're spending quite literally 24 hours with one another, and they realize, like, hey, I mean, unless we commit incest, maybe it's time for us to actually explore boys. They do. Of course, this is not a normal way that they're exploring boys. They're going out of their house with binoculars. And they're bringing those binoculars everywhere and just spying on the neighbor boys. And then this neighboring lot of boys notices them. They're like, okay, cool, let's, we're bored, we're in this small village anyways, let's just give them some attention. And because they're so confused now with all of these happenings, with all of this environment they're creating for themselves, when they go home and they go back to writing, they try to do this role play when one acts as the other, and then when they want to go back to their body, whatever, this is how they described it, then they would scream at each other, give me back myself and I'll give you back yourself. Dramatic, I know. And often the dominant one, Jennifer, would scream at June. Sometimes when she would try to like even have like a separate identity, she would be like, you are Jennifer, you are me. So clearly some obsessive girlfriend vibes here, but it's twins that we're talking about. When they go back to spying on these boys, this is like Davy's boys. It was a bunch of guys just hanging out with more guys from school, and their family was very against these twins even just being connected to them. So on one occasion they brought them like in their living room. They were just like, yeah, can you distance them yourselves from our family? And they left, and then went back to spying on the boys with binoculars from a hill until the boys came back out. This is also when both of them lost their virginity. But of course this will seem logical to you. They didn't lose it at the same time, like with the same person, or it's just physically impossible. And they resented one another for that. Well, actually June resented Jennifer more because she lost hers first. And then they were like fighting over these guys. Well, these guys were actually abusing both of them. It just fueled both of them up with rage. These boys actually just went to psychologically abuse them, and they started to physically abuse them as well. So Jennifer would, for example, have to watch while her sister June was abused and then raped by one of these boys. So June, due to jealousy, due to all of this submerged rage, actually attacked Jennifer at some point, and it was pretty close to like even killing her. But then she stopped herself, because again, she saw herself in her sister. She couldn't just kill her, because if one dies, the other one is technically dead, according to them. Eventually, though, these Davis boys moved on, went on with their studies, and the twins were just left on their own again. They kind of had like different relationships, but nothing will last. I think like this is when they kind of were super confused, because again, nobody told them how to adult. Nobody explained anything to these twins. So they just didn't know how to move on and have healthy, normal relationships in life in general. So what do? They turned to crime, and they started like randomly vandalizing places, mostly robbing. But nobody, even though there were witnesses to those crimes, nobody reported them, nobody truly cared about them. Until they set this like tractor store on fire. And obviously this was somebody's property that they have just ruined, so finally they actually went to court, they were denied bail, and they were hospitalized. They went to Broadmoor Hospital, which is one of the most infamous places in the UK. It's one of those infamous health hospitals out of which most people actually don't come out, because it has the worst of the worst. Like Yorkshire Ripper was there, people who are heavily mentally deranged, and for serial killers as well. They were like, yeah, we truly don't know what else to do with these two. Of course, in this mental hospital, the two of them still keep doing the same things. Stiff bodies, they would have to get them up to even get them to canteen. People reported that they even had to shut their eyelids so that they would sleep. And this is when truly the game for them even escalated. So you know how like everything moving in sync, eating in sync. Now when they would talk to each other, it would be like, okay, cool, you are starving for a couple of days and I'm eating on your behalf. Doesn't work like that biologically, does it? And then they would switch. And then they would allow the other one to switch. And eventually, the skinnier for them was the better. In the canteen also, they would make sure that they're sitting facing each other. So one of them facing the wall, the other one facing outside. And then June, again, is kind of rebelling in all of these instances. Like, remember in the therapy session, she would kind of try to talk, but Jennifer would like shut her up. Be like, no, how dare you, you know, we're the same person. So June would kind of start rebelling and just drag her chair across the hall and sit in the same direction that Jennifer was sitting on that day. Jennifer was stewing. There are records from her diary where she was like, I hate her, I want to kill her. Because in Jennifer's mind, the twins, the two of them, to show this real connection, they should have even been born at the exact same minute. There shouldn't be any difference between the two of them. How come that suddenly her twin, you know, her soulmate, is rebelling against her? Again, if they only understood just the basics of biology maybe, but then what creepy twin story would I be telling you today? There's truly plenty. I could have chosen from a couple of them, but yeah, this is the one that fascinates me. Truly, during these escalations, now because they were monitored, they couldn't release anger onto each other like they used to do before. However, then they started releasing it onto nurses, and it was mostly Jennifer, although both of them just started rebelling. They just couldn't handle the situation they were in. So finally, once that happens, once they started attacking the staff offers them an ultimatum. And they were like, okay, cool, you keep behaving like this, one of you is gonna be a better one. The one that behaves better is gonna go to a better facility and we are gonna separate you permanently. Done. Never gonna see each other again. And of course, this kind of actually caused a death sentence for the other one because she just couldn't handle it. After they spent 11 years in Baltimore Hospital and they were the youngest patients there, Jennifer actually just tells the nurse, she's like, listen, I am going to die. And the nurse is like, you're in perfect health, what the hell? But the next day, she falls ill. Suspicious or not? And she's just suddenly progressing until she falls into coma. Now, let me know down in the comments below, do you believe that somebody can will themselves to death because one had to die for the other one to survive and live happily ever after? What do you think about that? Was there something mystical to these twins truly? Or was it just that maybe there was foul play, maybe one of them was just actually sick and nobody ever knew because the medicine wasn't up to date? Probably gonna have different opinions in the comments on that. Whatever it was weird because Jennifer fell into a coma on the day that they were supposed to be released. So she was rushed to the hospital and June was rushed with her and she died. And after her death, this is what June actually engraved onto her tombstone. We once were two, we two made one. We know we're two, through life we won. Rest in peace. The official cause of death for Jennifer was the inflammation to the heart, so what causes that? Could it have been foul play? Was it something mystical? It's up to you to decide, but yeah, that is like official medical cause at the time. And weirdly enough, without Jennifer in her life, June started talking, just like normally, as if it was always natural to her, just talking, pure English, solid, no problem whatsoever. And she actually stopped writing, and the latest I've known, she's in Wales, like taking care of the family. But right after Jennifer's death, she actually still said that she lived in fear of her sister. And I looked further, researching like what could have motivated this, what the hell is this? There is this concept in psychology called folie à deux, and it means that one person is the inducer, whereas the other one is the receiver. So here, obviously, Jennifer was the inducer and she was trying to control her sister at all times and all of her actions. She just wanted a follower, somebody she can boss around and turn them into the same person, and who better than her twin? That is truly it to this case. And the world still today, what I can tell you from all of the research is that still the world wants to believe in the mystical about these two, wants to believe that maybe they're delusional, possessed, they just wanted to be like one another, rather than both of them just actually, yeah, having like maybe mental health issues, parenting, bullying, everything that contributed to them being this way, rather than them actually having like some mystical powers to them. But you let me know down below in the comments, what do you think? I think it's just the creepiest case in general. Twins just creep me out when they try to like finish each other's sentences. I'm like, please stop it. And I'm gonna do twins soon on the podcast, and then probably have like a whole week of just other twin cases, just because I'm aware of a couple. And each of them is more bizarre than the other. But this is the one that always stuck with me, and it's spooky Halloween. So this is what we're doing. Silent twins. Mystical or not? That's it. If at any point during this video you didn't wanna gorge your eyes out, leave a like, yeah? Maybe subscribe. Yeah, that's one way to get subscribers, Maya. Yeah, it's the easiest way to support the channel, and it's the easiest way to know when the content is in your feed this week and then for the rest of your life, because I keep doing this. I don't sleep at night. And maybe you won't either. Isn't that just the goal in life, truly? Really, yeah, you're rambling. So I'm gonna escort myself out and see you guys tomorrow. Nothing else to tell you, nothing else to say. So go out there and make better decisions and don't copy somebody else, even if they're a twin. Bye. Bye. Bye guys.